Everything you think you know about cozy medieval castles is wrong. That image of roaring fires and grand halls? A complete fantasy. In reality, a castle was a stone death trap in winter. The walls literally sucked the heat out of your body, and the drafts were so bad they could blow out a candle from across the room. The greatest threat wasn't an army outside. It was freezing to death inside. So, how did people actually survive a winter night when their own fortress was actively trying to freeze them to death? To understand this, you have to forget everything you think you know about a house. Your home is designed for comfort. A medieval castle was designed for one thing: defense. And the perfect material for stopping a siege engine, stone, is one of the worst materials for staying warm. Stone is a thermal sink. It doesn't insulate, it leaches. Throughout the day, it absorbs the cold from the winter air, and at night, it radiates that cold inward, relentlessly pulling heat from everything inside. Staying warm in a castle was like trying to boil a lake. They didn't understand thermodynamics. They only understood proximity to a flame. The very architecture was an enemy of warmth. The Great Hall, the center of castle life, was a masterpiece of defensive design and social statement. It needed to be large enough to host the Lord's court, feed his retinue, and even house soldiers. But its soaring ceilings and enormous volume made it a thermal nightmare. Any heat that was produced immediately rose and vanished into the rafters, leaving the people below in the cold. And this problem of cold wasn't limited to the nobility. While a peasant's small, single-room hut made of wattle and daub might seem primitive, its small size and materials, wood, mud, and straw, were actually better insulators than a lord's imposing stone fortress. But the peasant's advantage ended there, as their access to fuel and food was far more precarious. For everyone, rich and poor, winter was a siege, and the enemy was the cold itself. The reality of a medieval night was a deep, damp, bone-chilling cold that never went away. The smoke from the fires, especially from early central hearths with a simple hole in the roof for a chimney, would sting the eyes and coat every surface with soot. Survival depended on creating small islands of warmth in an ocean of cold. It was a science of microclimates, fought on multiple fronts. The fire was the heart of this battle, but it was a deeply flawed weapon. An open hearth in the center of the room lost the vast majority of its heat straight up to the ceiling. The later invention of the wall fireplace and chimney was a major technological leap as it funneled smoke out of the room, but it was still terribly inefficient. Modern estimates suggest over 80% of the heat from a medieval fireplace escaped up the chimney. You had to be practically sitting in the embers, in a special alcove called an inglenook, to feel its full effect. The next line of defense was clothing. We're not talking about simply wearing a sweater indoors. People wore multiple, heavy layers constantly. Wool was the miracle fiber of the age, as it retains much of its insulating property even when damp. A typical nobleman might wear linen undergarments, followed by woolen hose for his legs, a long tunic, and then perhaps another, thicker, fur-lined tunic on top. Over all of this was the mantle, or cloak, a ubiquitous garment that served as a coat by day and an extra blanket by night. Warmth was also consumed. The winter diet shifted to preserved foods, salted meats, dried fish, and hearty grains. The staple meal was pottage, a thick, perpetually simmering stew of grains, vegetables, and whatever scraps of meat were available. A hot, calorie-dense bowl of pottage was a critical dose of internal heating. Drinking ale and mulled wine also provided a temporary, if deceiving, sensation of warmth and much-needed calories. But how you deployed these tools depended entirely on your station. A lord or a lady had the best chance. They lived and slept in the solar, a private room that, due to its smaller size, was the most heatable space in the castle. They commanded enormous resources, primarily firewood, which was logged and hauled by servants in vast quantities. They had the thickest tapestries, the deepest mattresses stuffed with feathers, and beds piled high with expensive furs. But even their life was not free of the cold. The garderobe, or toilet, was often a small stone room, projecting from an outer wall, making a visit a truly frigid and hasty experience. For a servant, life was a paradox. During the day, Their hard, physical labor, hauling wood, tending fires, cooking, cleaning, generated body heat that kept them warm. But the moment the work stopped, the cold attacked. They slept on straw pallets in the Great Hall, or in crowded attic spaces, relying on the crush of other bodies for warmth. A trusted servant might sleep on a truckle bed at the foot of their masters, offering security in exchange for a slightly less cold spot on the floor. Their survival was about getting through the night to the next day of hard, warming labor. This constant, oppressive cold shaped the very way people thought and lived. It dictated the rhythm of life itself. With no effective artificial light beyond expensive candles or smoky rushlights, the day's work ended with the sun. The winter nights were immensely long, dark, and filled with a profound emptiness. This led to a different pattern of sleep, what historians call segmented sleep. People would go to bed shortly after dusk and sleep for a few hours, the first sleep. They would then wake up for an hour or two around midnight. This was a quiet, contemplative time used to pray, talk with family, or simply reflect before going back to bed for a second sleep until dawn. The cold was also a direct assault on health. The damp chill seeped into the bones, aggravating conditions like arthritis and rheumatism. Respiratory infections, from the common cold to deadly pneumonia, were rampant in the smoky, crowded halls. For the very young and the very old, a harsh winter was often a death sentence, a simple illness made fatal by the body's inability to stay warm. The cold even reinforced the rigid social structure. Your importance was literally measured by your proximity to the fire. The Lord and his family occupied the warmest space directly by the hearth. Honored guests sat nearby. Further down the table, and further from the fire, sat the lesser knights and officials, feeling a noticeable drop in temperature. To be left out in the cold was not just a metaphor, it was a physical and social reality. So the romantic image of the cozy medieval castle is a profound misunderstanding. Life wasn't cozy. It was a constant, desperate battle against an enemy that was already inside the walls. A battle fought with wool, with smoke, with stew, and with the warmth of other human bodies. The next time you walk into your home on a cold day and feel that gentle, invisible wave of warmth from your central heating. The next time you flick a switch on a thermostat and instantly command a perfect, comfortable temperature. Take a moment. Remember that for more than 1,000 years, that simple, effortless comfort was a power beyond the wildest dreams of the wealthiest king. You are living in a palace of warmth your ancestors could never have conceived of. A world where warmth is not a fleeting prize to be won, but a simple, assumed fact of life. They survived the Stone Age of comfort so that we could live in an age where the cold is kept outside the walls, not just held at bay for a few hours by a struggling fire.